Hi everybody, welcome to the class Listening and Speaking in ESL for IHS and OUM universities, and this is Dr. George Pereira once again. So today's topic is the speaking skills. So these are some questions I want to ask you and try to give answers, and let us also find answers through our discussion. Regarding the speaking skills, what are the interaction skills? What are the routines? What are the negotiation skills? What are the second language learner oral strategies? What are the achievement strategies? What are the reduction strategies? What would be your answer? Think about it. So, summary of the topics for speaking skills. There are some other points which will be discussed later, but these are the main points. Interaction skills, routines, negotiation skills, learn oral strategies, achievement strategies, reduction strategies. So, on the interaction skills, routines, and negotiation skills. Then, under learner oral strategies, achievement strategies, and reduction strategies. So, let us move forward in our discussion. Interaction skills as speaking skills, as part of speaking skills. Interaction skills, we have two areas here. Routines, that is information routines, interaction routines, monologue, and dialogue. Negotiation skills, negotiating the meaning, procedures of negotiation, language clarity and speaking appropriately, and management interaction. All these are skills related to negotiating. So let us read this. Consider what is involved in producing a conversational utterance. Apart from being grammatical, the utterance must also be appropriate on very many levels at the same time. It must conform to the speaker's aim, to the role, relationships between the interactors, to the setting, topic, linguistic context, and so forth. The speaker must also produce his utterance within severe constraints. He does not know in advance what will be said to him, and hence what his utterance will be a response to. Yet, if the conversation is not to flag, he must respond extremely quickly. The rapid formulation of utterances which are simultaneously right on several levels is central to the spoken communicative skill. So this is taken from Johnson, but it was found in Bygate 1987. This observation in a nutshell is what speaking skills are all about. As you can see, speaking is not a unitary skill. In fact, it is a lot like learning how to drive a car. So again, if you revisit this, the speaker must also produce his utterance within severe constraints. So it's like driving a car. Like driving, speaking requires the amalgamation of knowledge and skills. So two skills we also discussed already, knowledge and skills, that must be coordinated to ensure its successful execution. So in this topic, we will look at the speaking skills. Specifically, we will look at the interaction skills, which are made up of routines and negotiation skills. These are skills that are utilized by first language or native language speakers and must be acquired by or taught to second language learners so that they can function in the second language. In addition, we will also look at the second language learner oral strategies. So these are skills that second language learners have and apply to compensate for their lack of proficiency. So these strategies are divided into achievement and reduction strategies. So interaction skills. In topic 6 is the skills involved in speaking, which include interaction skills. In this topic, we will continue with a close examination of interaction skills, which can be divided into routines and negotiation skills. We learn to negotiate. In communicating, we normally organize what we want to communicate in typical patterns. So these patterns, which correspond more or less to typical kinds of message, and they are called routines. Routines are patterns. Examples of routines. So these patterns include storytelling, describing or comparing and instructing. So when we are speaking, we tell a story of what happened to us while we were shopping, for example, describing something, or let us say about some place we are describing, or we compare, let us say, for example, in a very casual conversation, the food in from two restaurants we compare, and we give instructions sometimes, instructing. So we have also developed skills to deal with all sorts of communication problems. These are called negotiation skills and include the ability to check on specific meanings, to change wording, to correct mistaken interpretations, and to find words for uncommon ideas. So negotiation skills are common to all kinds of communication. So let us turn to the first aspect in negotiation skills, that is routines. According to Bygate, routines can be defined as conventional ways of presenting information. Because routines are regular, they are predictable and help ensure clarity in speech. There are two main kinds of routines: information routines and interaction routines. So these are patterns: information and interaction. Information routines. Information routines are common types of information structures, such as stories, descriptions of places and people, presentation of facts, comparisons, and instructions. These may be grouped as expository, evaluative. Expository routines involve factual information usually requiring sequencing or identity of subjects. Examples of expository routines are narration, description, and instruction. Evaluative routines, on the other hand, are normally based on expository routines. They involve drawing conclusions, usually requiring giving results. So examples of evaluative routines are explanations, predictions, justifications, preferences, and decisions. So narrative, description, and instruction, for example, as expository, these are evaluated through evaluative routines. That is, drawing conclusions in those. Explanations, predictions, justifications, preferences, and decisions are ways of drawing conclusions. For example, your preference for this restaurant or to the other one. You justify why you want to buy this but not the other. For example, in casual encounters. So, how can information routines affect a speaker's ability? So, one example is the narrative. A narrative has a number of essential features. We narrate something, the setting, where it took place, the plot, step by step what happened, participants, and the theme, who were involved in it, and what kind of themes that you are talking about. In order to tell a narrative successfully, a speaker must be able to give a succinct but accurate account of each feature. Where it took place, what are the stages of it or the steps of it, the plot, who were the participants, and what was it about. So the more features narrative has, the more difficult it will be to tell the story. Simply put, the more complex the information, the more difficult it would be to handle, regardless of which structure is used. So consider the description of a room. How could you make it easier or harder to describe? Think about your answer. Or think about a trip you made. Think about shopping, marketing you did. Think about your conversation with a colleague at the campus or with the administrative staff. So, okay, let us proceed. Interaction routines. Interaction routines are sequences of kinds of terms occurring in typical kinds of interactions. Interaction routines are the sequence of interactions. These include telephone conversations, radio or television interviews, casual encounters, conversations at parties, interview situations, all of which tend to be organized in characteristic ways. Consider at a restaurant. What would you expect the customer and the waiter to say to each other? How could you divide such an episode into parts? What order would the parts have? Speakers can get the sequence wrong and thus appear kind of, badly presenting oneself, being rude. So, for example, a speaker may start talking without giving an initial greeting or checking who is on the other end of the line. Proficient speakers are those that can meet the expectations of their interlocutors within the bounds of acceptable convention. So, this does not mean that proficient speakers memorize what needs to be said and when. It just means they know what expectations and possibilities can be realized in a given situation. Like information routines, conventions of interactional routines are also based on common sense. For example, greetings must sensibly come at the beginning of conversations, while farewells come at the end. These conventions, however, may vary from culture to culture. For example, the way people greet, beginning the conversation, and giving farewells and all that may differ from culture to culture. Good speakers develop an extensive repertoire of routines. These are informational and interactional and are based on their familiarity with certain types of information, structures, and interaction sequence. The information has its own structure as well as its own sequence. So, both routines reflect the knowledge the speakers have and can even become stock patterns. So, for example, the talk of a tour guide. Actually, here again, I had to remind you that knowledge and skills both go together for this type of interaction. Repertoire. There is a word here, extensive repertoire of routines. uh, that means all the patterns that can take place, that is also the particular kind of activity that can take place in the routines or in the patterns. Okay. Then the routine skills can be divided into two. This is the way we summarize: information routines, interaction routines. Information routines, information comes from stories, presentations, comparisons, instructions. Interaction routines take place through casual encounters, telephone conversations, radio, television interviews, and so forth. These are only some examples. Then we have another topic, and that goes with monologue and dialogue. Here, there is the word has to be you. It's a mistake, so I will correct it. Monologue and dialogue. Another way of looking at routines is to consider the different types of spoken or oral language. These can be divided into monologue and dialogue, which can be categorized further as planned or unplanned, familiar or unfamiliar, respectively. When it is unplanned and unfamiliar, even the monologue or dialogue can be different. So, when it is planned and familiar, it's easy. So, types of spoken language: monologue, planned, unplanned, dialogue, interpersonal, transactional. That one also familiar, unfamiliar, even transactional ones, familiar, unfamiliar. So this is from Brown, 2001, types of spoken language. Monologue refers to a form of communication in which one person speaks and others listen. There is no interaction among participants, single speaker. The focus is solely on the person speaking. The term monologue communication or communication as monologue is an extension of this basic definition. It refers to communication in which there is no genuine interaction, in which one speaks without any real concern for the other person's feelings or attitude. The monologic communicator is only concerned with his or her own goals and is interested in the other person only insofar as that person can be used to achieve those goals. So in dialogue, there is two-way interaction. So that is different from monologue. Each person is both speaker and listener. In dialogue communication or communication as dialogue, there is deep concern for the other person and for the relationship between the two people. The objective of dialogue is mutual understanding and empathy. So there is mutual understanding and empathy in the dialogue, not the monologue. There is respect for the other person not because what this person can do or give, but simply because this person is a human being and therefore deserves to be treated honestly and sincerely. So, the summary of characteristics of monologic and dialogic communicators. Monologue and dialogue. Characteristics. So, it is summarized here: monologue, dialogue. Under the monologue, frequently uses negative criticism and negative personal judgments. These are actually in a monologue. One example, it could be the other way as well. Appreciation could be there. Okay, it depends on the philosophy and knowledge or psychology of the other person, my personal feelings, my ideas on that. Then the dialogue avoids negative criticism and negative personal judgments. So practice using positive criticism. I like your introduction best. Really caught my attention. Then frequently uses dysfunctional communication such as did expressing unwillingness to talk or uses messages that are unrelated to the topic discussion. There is no use discussing this. I can see that you don't understand what I'm trying to say. Forget it. So it's like I think the monologue also sounds more individualistic, only the selfish talk. So that's the way from these examples I see it. Then the dialogue. Keep the channel of communication open. I really don't know what I did, why I did that, or what I did to offend you. But please tell me I don't want to repeat the same mistake. Then the monologue rarely uses acknowledgement. Then in this side dialogue frequently paraphrases or summarizes what the person has said to ensure accurate understanding. Then fourth one, rarely requests clarification of the other person's perspective or ideas. Here, requests clarification as necessary and asks for the other person's point of view because of a genuine interest in the other person's perspective. Then under monologue, the fifth one, frequently requests personal positive statements or statements of approval. How did you like the way I told that guy off? Clever, no? Then the dialogue avoids requesting for personal positive statements. Then we are going to another topic, that is negotiation skills. As the name implies, negotiation skills involve getting through the routines on specific occasions to achieve understanding. There are two types of negotiation skills: negotiation of meaning and management of interaction. When you negotiate, you negotiate the meaning and then manage the interaction. In both cases, the presence of the speaker has a direct influence on how the interaction develops. Negotiation of meaning. Negotiation of meaning refers to the skill of communicating clearly. For our purposes, we are talking about negotiating to achieve mutual understanding. So, in spoken discourse, this is an aspect for oral interaction, negotiating. But this is in contrast to written communication. So two important aspects need to be fulfilled in order to ensure understanding. That is the level of explicitness. It has to be explicit. Then the procedures of negotiation. So aspect of negotiation of meaning. Negotiation of meaning, under that comes level of explicitness, procedures of negotiation. Then speak with regards to what the listener knows. Then speak specifically and may use specialized vocabulary. Level of explicitness. This refers to how the speaker chooses to speak with regard to what the listener knows. the listener needs to know and can understand. So it has to be explicit. Speaker speaks what the learner knows or can understand. So try the following exercise. This is in the textbook, and you can read the textbook and try this. Okay, so I'm not going to do this since this video will be too long. Okay, let us move to the next one. Procedures of negotiation. This is the second aspect of negotiation of meaning that can aid understanding. What we have discussed earlier is the level of background explicitness, how much background knowledge we can assume. This is without a doubt very important. Nevertheless, another type of explicitness concerns the words and phrases we choose. Negotiation of meaning involves not only how much information is communicated, but also how specific we are in what we say. I mean, it has to be known to the listener or can understand. So something the listener can understand or listener knows what the person is talking about. So there are many procedures of negotiation that we utilize to increase or decrease the level of explicitness of our discourse. These include to make our discourse clear or understandable, a known topic. So these include paraphrase, metaphor, and the use of specialized vocabulary. So most of the time we use a general term and make it more specific when necessary. So however, there are times when we are very careful with the words or expressions we choose. For example, when we want to emphasize the seriousness or humor of our message. Another common procedure that we use to make our talk explicit is to supply the meanings of our words we do not know. For example, a kangaroo is a marsupial. Is a difficult word, and if you want to try the dictionary meaning, I'll give it to you again.
Marsupial.
Yeah, marsupial. It is a type of mammal from Australia or South or Central America that is not completely developed when it is born and is carried around the pouch or the body part like a pocket. So that is the meaning.
Marsupial.
Marsupial. Okay, a particularly kangaroo is no. For example, a kangaroo is a marsupial. A particularly useful procedure is knowing how to get things repeated or clarified, or knowing how to repeat and clarify. So this is especially useful for second language learners. Then we are moving to the third aspect, that is language clarity and speaking appropriately. In the field of communication, explicitness of discourse or clarity in verbal communication is achieved through increasing. Through increase in the language clarity. So this sentence is not complete. Through increase in the language clarity. So increase language clarity. Use concrete words, use precise words, use details and examples, use accurate information. So when you speak appropriately, use language reflecting formal situation, wary of jargon and slang, avoid crude language, demonstrate sensitivity, avoid racist labels. So those are very important in the conversation. So increase in language clarity. Have a good vocabulary and use specific language. No ambiguity or confusion. Specific language is achieved through using concrete words, using details and examples. Then speaking appropriately. Speaking appropriately means choosing language and symbols that are adapted to the needs, interests, and knowledge and attitudes of listeners. We can develop appropriacy or appropriate language by using language that reflect the formality of the situation, being wary of jargon and slang, avoiding crude language, demonstrating sensitivity. So, language that uses words that apply to one sex, race, or other group as though they represent everyone. Examples are the masculine pronoun he and the word part man, as in chairman. So, chairperson is the alternative, which are used to represent all humans. Non-parallel language is language in which terms are changed because of sex, race, or other characteristics of the individual. Since it treats groups of people differently, non-parallel language is also belittling. It belittles. Two common forms of non-parallelism are marking John's a woman doctor as opposed to John's a doctor. So these are examples. And the other one is unnecessary association, associating a person with somebody else, putting emphasis on one person's association with another when not talking about the other person. So avoiding racist labels. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. A familiar rhyme that you may hear among children or that you chanted long ago, probably because it provides a defense against cruel name calling. Words do hurt permanently sometimes. So racist language is a sign of prejudice. So think of non-racist alternatives for the following. For example, firemen, fire personnel. So just think about the alternative languages for these. Okay. The interaction routines can be characterized as listed below. For the speaker, announce, this is for the speaker, then we have also for the listener. For the speaker, announcing or indicating one's purpose in advance, checking that the other person has understood, asking the other person for information or language the person has forgotten, asking the other person's opinion, responding to requests for clarification from the listener, or for instance by rephrasing, repeating, giving examples and analogies, checking common ground, adapting to points made by the interlocutor, and clarifying meaning or intention by summarizing. So let us, that is for the speaker. Then for the listener, indicating understanding by gestures, facial expression or markers as the speaker proceeds, checking or indicating understanding by summarizing the speaker's meaning or intention, indicating uncertainty about comprehension, indicating incomprehension, asking for clarification, indicating current interpretations, expressing appropriate agreement, reservations, and appreciation of speaker's point, interrupting where necessary to express any of the foregoing. Then we are going to another topic, that is management of interaction. This is, in simple terms, deciding who is going to speak next and what the person is going to talk about. In a normal conversation with no chairperson to delegate speaking rights, this is an essential skill to possess. Without such skills, all interaction will become chaotic and very messy. This management of interaction has two aspects. that is agenda management and turn taking. Agenda management refers to control over content, the choice of topic of an interaction, while the latter has to do with who speaks when and for how long. That's very interesting. Then agenda management. So this deals with the basic freedom to start, maintain, direct, and end a conversation. Then second one is okay. So three friends are talking about a recent trip made by one of them. So you can go through this in the textbook. Then turn taking. This is another way of speaker can control a conversation. So this is a skill, turn taking. To be efficient at getting a turn and good at letting another speaker have a turn. So efficient turn taking involves 5 skills. Recognizing the right moment to get a turn, recognizing another speaker's signal to speak, knowing how to let someone else have a turn, knowing how to use appropriate turn structure, knowing how to signal for a turn. It's a skill, speaking skill that we have to develop. So from a communicative perspective, turn-taking procedures are considered under maintaining conversations. So one of the essential skills in maintaining conversations is the exchange of speaker sorry for the mishap. One of the essential skills in maintaining conversations is the exchange of speaker and listener roles or conversational turns. Conversational turns is defined by the exchange of speaker and listener roles throughout the interaction. So, conversation is defined by the exchange of speaker and listener roles throughout the interaction.
Cue.
Conversation is, we accomplish this through wide variety of verbal and non-verbal cues
Cue.
that signal conversational turn, the changing, maintaining of the speaker or listener role during the conversation. So we are going into specific areas of so-called cues. Speaker cues. Speakers regulate their conversations through two major types of cues: turn maintaining cues and turn yielding cues that we find. So speaker cues we have turn maintaining cues and turning yielding cues. Show that the speaker has more to say, audibly inhaling, continuing gestures, avoiding eye contact, sustaining the intonation pattern, vocalizing pauses. From this, speaking turns is being passed, dropping intonation, prolonged silence, direct eye contact, asking general question, and nodding. So as the term implies, turn maintaining cues are designed to enable the speaker to maintain the speaker role. So the following can be identified as turn maintaining cues. Audibly inhaling to show that the speaker has more to say. Continue gestures. So these are some examples. Avoiding eye contact, sustaining the intonation pattern, vocalizing pauses, and all that. Turn yielding cues. Tell the listener that the speaker is finished and wishes to exchange the role of speaker for that of listener. So, to assume the role of the speaker, paralinguistic cues can be the following: dropping your intonation, maintaining a prolonged silence, making direct eye contact with the listener, asking some general questions, nodding in the direction of a particular listener. So these are ways of getting the other person to talk. As the speaker, you are giving these signals, and this is a skill. So listener cues. So these are some of the cues that we are going to discuss: back channeling, turn denying, turn requesting, and so forth. Turn requesting cues let the speaker know that you would like to take a turn as speaker. These include: I would like to say something, or otherwise vocalized pauses, opening your eyes and mouth wide as if to say something, beginning to gesture with a hand, leaning forward in your seat. Then you can indicate your reluctance to assume the role of speaker by using turn denying cues. These include: I don't know, avoiding eye contact, engaging in behavior that is incompatible with speaking, for example, coughing or blowing your nose. So these are things that we find in second language learners. Sometimes due to other reasons, lack of motivation, or they are shy, they use these techniques. Another way that you could regulate the conversation without assuming the role of the speaker is through using back channeling cues. These have been termed as acknowledgement tokens. For example, brief utterances such as ah, yeah, and all that. You can communicate at least 4 types of information with back channeling cues. For example, you can indicate agreement with the speaker through smiles, nods, and approval. Right, exactly, of course. Then in a similar manner, you can indicate your disagreement with the speaker, shaking through frowning, shaking your head, or making comments such as no, not true, or never. You can indicate your degree of involvement or boredom with the speaker. Attentive posture, forward leaning, and focused eye contact tell the speaker that you are involved in the conversation. In attentive posture, backward leaning and avoidance of eye contact communicate your lack of involvement. So involvement or non-involvement. Then you can give the speaker pacing cues. You can, for example, ask the speaker to slow down by raising your hand near your ear and leaning forward. Otherwise, you can ask the speaker to speed up by nodding your head continuously. You can also cue the speaker verbally by simply asking, slow down please. I want to make sure I am getting all this. Similarly, you can tell the speaker to speed up by saying something like, and gone, yes. So you can ask for clarification. For example, who, when, where. But some of these back channeling cues are actually interruptions. So interruptions can be confirming rather than disconfirming. It tells the speaker that you are listening and involved. So interactions may serve a variety of specific functions. So these are examples. You can read it in the textbook as well, but some of the interruptions may serve as specific functions. The functions are change the topic, correct the speaker, seek information to ask a question of clarification, better or top the speaker with a funnier story, end the conversation, and introduce essential information. So the question, do men or women interrupt more? So one answer is men interrupt more than women do, but no significant differences between boys and girls. Fathers interrupt their children more than mothers do. Men and women do not differ in their interrupting behavior. So these are from some research, and you also can do research and come up with the same idea or something different. Okay. Then we are going into another area that we talked about at the beginning, the first slide. Second language learner, or L2, oral strategies. Second language learners, oral strategies. So, our discussion in the previous section has revolved around the speaking skills of the native speakers mostly, but also focusing also on our second language learners. But this is not educate for the second language learners. So, these are some skills. The L2 learner oral strategies include achievement and reduction strategies. The purpose of both strategies is to compensate for a problem of expression. This means that when the L2 learner anticipates a problem in expressing him or herself, the person will utilize either strategy, achievement and reduction. Using achievement strategy, the second language learner will compensate for the language gap by finding a substitute, alternative. That is, finding a way to convey the second language learner's message by guesswork or intuition or remembered expression or various kinds of analogy. So the example is given in this dialogue. I came down from 20 degrees. I don't know how you say it was 20 degrees hot, you know. And I came in Scotland to 20 degrees freezing. So noteworthy here is that the learner uses the two expressions in italics instead of plus 20 minus 20 or 20 above 20 below 0. The learner is able to think up expressions to convey his message quite successfully, even though they are not the normal native speaker choice. So the learner has improvised substitute, alternative, native. So that is the achievement strategy. He achieved to communicate using substitutes and alternative language. Speaker do not lose or alter any of their when using achievement strategy. Whatever they want to say, they won't lose because they use the achievement strategy. So they substitute or use the alternative methods to say the same thing. And I think the second language learners at the beginning, they should be allowed, my personal opinion is, should be allowed to do that because that's how they try to master the language as time goes. So they may not use the achievement strategy all the time. The example is this. Okay, so we are going to move forward. Uh, in the example above, the speaker is supposed to be describing his job in a laundry. We'll go back to that. I have to look after a machine if something is doesn't work. Have to, well, it is not difficult because there is only three buttons, all automatic. Okay. So in the example about the speaker is supposed to be describing his job in a laundry. However, he obviously did not have the language to describe what he has to do with the machine. So he abandoned his attempt and talked about the controls instead. What he is in control with, something he can do. The speaker has reduced his message to something he is able to say. So these actions are known as reduction strategies. Achievement means, he's using the language to alternative language or to convey his message. Or reduction means he uses what he knows about to convey the message. So achievement strategies are guessing, paraphrasing, and cooperative strategies. Achievement strategy, guess, paraphrase, cooperative strategies, and then you goal achieved. Guessing is just as often guessing is just as often used in speaking as it is in reading. So the it means that the speaker will search for a word the speaker doesn't know or is not sure of, using the speaker's knowledge of the morphology of the language. The speaker hopes to hit on a word or expression that the listener will recognize and understand. The speaker can do this in a number of ways. Foreignize and first language word, pronouncing it as though it belongs to the second language. Borrow, first language word without changing it at all and hoping the listener will recognize the word in the context it is spoken. Provide a literal translation of the first language word. Uh, Invent, coin, that also can happen. Coin means two words together. A new second language word using the person's knowledge of the second language creatively and hoping once again that the listener will be able to get the meaning. Foreignize, borrow, or a literal translation, or invent and coin a word, the second language learner. That is by guessing that it will communicate the message. Paraphrase. This involves the speaker searching his knowledge of the second language vocabulary for an alternative to the word or expression the speaker needs. The speaker can do this in two ways: through a lexical substitution, where the speaker finds a synonym or more general word to replace the word or expression the speaker has trouble with. For example, speaker could use animal, a more general term, for mongoose, the problem word. This way the listener may not notice that the speaker doesn't know the word, as it works within the context of the conversation. This is called lexical substitution. However, the word may not be too general. For example, it would sound odd to compliment your friend's Persian cat with, I like your animal. In addition, sometimes the word may not be precise enough. For example, saying, it is on the furniture is not much help for someone looking for car keys. To compensate for this, we may use another strategy. It's called through circumlocution, where the speaker simply expresses the speaker's meaning using more words instead of just the one intended. For example, the speaker may add, they are on the furniture by the window. As second language speakers, much of what we say may appear as circumlocution to native speakers because we do not always know or recall the normal expression when we are speaking. This may not be due to the reason that we do not know the word or expression. For example, the speaker in the extract below undoubtedly know how to use there, is, are, and this telephone is black. But what was eventually produced is rather different from what a native speaker might expect. The stairs are also with brown rugs, and there is also a telephone. The color of this telephone is black. Then there is the other strategy that we had three. The other strategy, third one is cooperative strategies. These are used when the speaker asks for help. They include asking for the problematic word, asking for a translation of his or her first language, physically indicating the object that the speaker means and means. The speaker may also get the listener to finish the sentence. So, which type of achievement strategy do you normally use or prefer to use, and why? Discuss in the class. Then we are moving into another strategy, that is reduction strategies. Reduction strategies involve speakers reducing what they want to say. There are generally two types of reduction strategies: avoidance strategy and compensatory strategy. Avoidance strategy. The most common type of avoidance strategy is syntactico-lexical avoidance within a semantic category. So, following exchange: I lost my road. You lost your road. I got lost. The non-native speaker avoided the lexical item entirely, not being able to come up with the word way at that point. So slowly he lost his way. I got lost. Phonological avoidance is also common. For example, a Japanese speaker may avoid the word rally due to its phonological difficulty and instead choose to simply say hit the ball. A more direct type of avoidance is topic avoidance, in which a whole topic of conversation might be avoided entirely. So speakers may choose for ingenious methods of topic avoidance. So these are the ways: changing the subject, pretending not to understand. So a very effective means to avoid answering questions: simply not responding at all, or noticeably abandoning a message when a thought becomes too difficult to express. So these things do second language learners in our classrooms. These are strategies we all use as second language learners and for whom English is a second language. Then compensatory strategies. Another common set of strategies involves compensation for missing knowledge. Instead of avoiding the problem, a speaker may alter the message to make it more manageable. The speaker keeps the conversation general and avoid using technical terms, specific expressions that are beyond the speaker's control. The speaker just say how much the speaker enjoyed the delicious meal rather than try to say how much the speaker appreciated the specific dish whose name and contents cannot pronounce. So this is a compensatory strategy. So there are a lot of compensatory strategies, and one is circumlocution. That is describing or exemplifying the target object of action, the thing you open bottle with for corkscrew. So that is called circumlocution.
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 Circumlocution. So approximation is the other one, using an alternative term which expresses the meaning of the target lexical item as closely as possible. Ship for sailboat. Use of all-purpose words. That is the overuse of thing, stuff, what do you call it, thing, that type of thing, that thing, that stuff. Word coinage. Creation non-existing second language word based on the supposed rule. So for vegetarian, vegetarianist. Prefabricated patterns using memorized stock phrases usually for survival purposes. Where is the comment, Elizabeth, where the morphological components are not known to the learner? Then there are other things, non-linguistic signals, mime, gesture and all that, literal translation, lexical items and all that, foreignizing, then code switching, that is using first language word with first language pronunciation, or uh, third language word with third language pronunciation while speaking in the second language. So code switching, especially from native language to the second language. Then appeal for help. For example, what do you call that? Or indirectly rising intonation, pause, or eye contact, asking for meaning. Then stalling or time gaining strategies using fillers or hesitation devices to fill pauses and to gain time to think. These points are very important actually. For example, a lot of research even in Sri Lanka, code switching all done, so that even for your research in the future, some of these things can be studied in your classrooms. How students for whom English is a second language, when they speak, they can use these strategies. So reduction strategies, avoidance and compensatory. This meal is very nice, but I am not sure how to complement it. So I better keep quiet and not to mention about it. That is avoidance. Compensatory. I'm not sure how to complement this very nice meal. However, I can just say that I really enjoyed it. So language knowledge is basically our linguistic competence. Grammar, pronunciation, rules, vocabulary and rules of use. Language skill is how this knowledge is used. It is divided into two components: the ability to manipulate language knowledge, motor perceptive skills, and in topic 2, apply it in communication, facilitation and compensation devices, interaction skills, and oral strategies. Now, this is schematically represented in the diagram below. Knowledge and skill, as we were discussing in earlier chapters. So, knowledge includes planning, selection, production. Then, skill has message planning, management skills, negotiation of meaning, production skills, and accuracy skills. That becomes the expression. So, knowledge and skills leads to expression. So, these are two questions for you. Speaking requires the amalgamation of knowledge and skills. Students need to knowledge needs Students need the knowledge as well as the skill to communication. In your opinion, what are such skills and how are these acquired? So, speaking skills. Summarize. These are two types of negotiation skills. Sorry, there are two types of negotiation skills: negotiation of meaning and management of interaction. So, elaborate on the two types and cite examples. So, while you are listening, you also can write down some of the points. You can summarize, make a mind map so that you will remember all these points. So, thank you very much. This is Dr. George Pereira for IHS and OUM. So, good luck with your studies. Take care. Bye.